Hello YouTube and welcome back to another video from me, your host, Logan Albright. This is not a book review. In truth, I've been a little bit of a slacker with my reading lately. I haven't got as much reading done as I would like, but I wanted to do some content related to Halloween and to spooky season because it is my favorite time of year. And so I thought today I would talk about some of my favorite horror movies to give you guys a bit of a watch list for the upcoming week between now and Halloween. So we're going to go through some of that. Next week and the week after, I will be in Iceland, but I'm going to try to do some kind of ahead of time pre-planning videos to upload, so that there'll be stuff there, even though I'm not physically present in the country. I would like to try to keep the Wednesday upload schedule punctual if I can, so I'm going to make an effort to do that. But if there's not something there, you'll know it's because I'm out of the country and I'm in Iceland, which I hope to have many exciting stories to tell when I get back from that. But in the meantime, let's get into horror movies. Now, I love horror movies. It's my favorite genre of film. I don't really like slasher movies so much. It's not about like blood and violence. I like psychological horror. I like a supernatural horror. I like things of that nature, things that just make you feel a little bit chilled and a little bit spooky. So let's get through them. I'm going to start with an honorable mention. This is my top 5 list, but I want to start with an honorable mention, which is Robert Eggers' The Witch. This is my favorite horror film of the last 10 years or so. It's the beginning of what is now known as elevated horror, distributed by A24, which does really interesting and beautiful horror films. This is kind of a great 17th century period piece about a family trying to survive in the wilderness with some kind of a supernatural influence, cursing them and making things hard for them. It's really spooky. It's really dark. It's got great atmosphere, and it's all very accurate to the period. He did a good job of researching all the dialogue and kind of using authentic dialogue to the period. And so I really love The Witch. It's got Anya Taylor-Joy in it, who has become a big star since then and has been in a lot of things that I really like. But it's just a great kind of very atmospheric, dark, spooky witch movie. And so I really recommend that. Everything Robert Eggers has done so far, I've loved, and he's got a new remake of Nosferatu coming out in December of this year, and I'm very excited to see that. There's not too many movies that I'm excited to see in the theaters anymore, but this is certainly one of them. So that's my honorable mention for my top 5 list. Number 5, The Wicker Man from 1973. I cannot stress this enough, not the Nicolas Cage remake version. This is the original with Christopher Lee, who is one of my very favorite actors. I really love The Wicker Man because it is pagan horror, and I'm obsessed with paganism, and I think it's great. And this involves a policeman from England going to this remote island to investigate a disappearance or possibly a murder, and finding that the island is run by a kind of pagan revivalist sect headed by Christopher Lee. And Christopher Lee is just excellent. I love him in everything. And this has kind of that great kind of nature horror and spooky, back to the land, back to the old ways of doing things. And the cop is very Christian and very angry. And he goes, "You're all a bunch of bloody pagans," and yells at people for having a different worldview than he has. Wicker Man is a great movie from 1973. I very much recommend it. And it's one of my top 5 favorite horror films. Speaking of religion, for some reason, and I don't really understand why, I find religious horror to be some of the scariest horror out there. And I'm not a Christian, so the whole Christian mythology doesn't really resonate with me too much. But for some reason, Christian religious horror movies are something that I really, really love. And The Exorcist is a great example of that. But I'm not choosing The Exorcist for this list because although I do really like it, it's not in my top 5. I'm choosing The Omen, classic 1970s horror film about the Antichrist starring Gregory Peck. It's a great kind of example of 70s horror. It does everything right. It's got a beautiful, chilling score by Jerry Goldsmith. It's really scary. There's one scene in particular that I don't want to spoil for people who haven't seen it, but it's the scene where the nanny says, "It's all for you, Damien." And that scene is something that lives in my mind rent-free all the time. I think it's incredibly chilling and scary. And I just think this is a great example of kind of 70s religious Christian horror. And I really love The Omen. And I haven't seen any of the sequels. I know there's many sequels, but the original just can't be beat. It's my number 4 favorite horror film of all time. Number 3 is John Carpenter's The Thing. Now, I waited a really long time to see this movie. I didn't see it for many, many years. And I finally saw it on, I think, the 40th anniversary screening in a movie theater for the first time. And the reason I didn't see it is because I knew it was Arctic horror, and I knew that it had to do with aliens. And I don't really like aliens. I don't think aliens are interesting. They're too sci-fi for me. I like kind of more fantasy style horror creatures rather than sci-fi ones, and so I wasn't that interested in it. But I finally saw it, and it is a perfect horror film. It is a masterpiece. It's got Kurt Russell in the lead role, who does a fantastic job. It's got incredible practical effects from not Rick Baker. I forget who does the practical effects, but the practical effects are some of the best in the business from the 80s. And it's just a great exercise in paranoia and screenwriting, because the idea is the thing is you don't know who it is. It could be anybody. It could be cloning any of your friends without your knowledge. And so that kind of paranoia that it instills is perfect. The writing is excellent. The character development is excellent. It's just a perfect horror film. And I'm sorry that I waited so long to see it, but I'm glad I finally did see it, because it is one of my favorites, probably my top 3 favorite horror films of all time. John Carpenter's The Thing. Now, the reason I said Rick Baker on the last one is because I was thinking of this film, my second favorite horror film of all time, American Werewolf in London, directed by John Landis, who I think is a super underrated director. John Landis also directed The Blues Brothers, which is my favorite comedy ever, and he's got a beautiful way of marrying kind of horror and comedy together. This is a great mixture of those two, because horror and comedy inherently go together. They're two kind of extreme reactions. You got that tension and that release with the laughter. And I think those two things go very, very well together. And this is a great example of that. It's got Griffin Dunne in it, who I really love. He's not the main character, but he's a great actor who hasn't done enough things. I really like him in that. It's got incredible practical effects by Rick Baker. Some of the best practical effects I've ever seen in anything. This is the idea, is you actually see the entire werewolf transformation on screen. It's not done off screen like some older werewolf films. This one is done on screen, and it's amazing. And I have no idea how they did it, because it's just like so incredible. It's really, really funny. It's really, really scary. It's just very unique. There's no other film like this one. And I love American Werewolf in London. I would count it as my second favorite horror film of all time. So what is my favorite horror film of all time if that's my second favorite? Well, it may surprise you to learn that my favorite horror film of all time is The Shining, directed by Stanley Kubrick, starring Jack Nicholson and Shelley Duvall. This is from the Kubrick box set that I got years and years ago on DVD. It's not the best box set ever, but you know, it's kind of old-fashioned looking, but I still have it. I need to upgrade it to a better copy at some point, and maybe a Blu-ray. But I love The Shining. I've seen it 100 times. I try to see it once a year around Halloween. It's perfect. It's from 1980, based on the Stephen King novel, but very different than the Stephen King novel, which I've read, but I didn't particularly like. It's just amazing. The performances are so great, so over the top, so creepy. There's all this beautiful atmospheric music. There's all these great effects. It's funny. Like Jack Nicholson's performance is really funny, but it'd be really scary at the same time. And I think of all the movies that are like 40 years old or more, this is the one that holds up the best in terms of being scary for me. I still get scared when I watch this. I think it's really, really well done. Kubrick is one of my favorite directors, and I love all his films, but this is my favorite of his. It's just got so many little eerie moments and great things. His usage of pauses and time. Like, I love directors who take their time and they just like allow the scenes to breathe and let the actors take pauses between their lines, and they don't cram everything in. They don't rush. It's just perfect. And it's got this beautiful mountaintop landscape where they're trapped in this hotel in the winter, and they're snowed in and they can't get out, and it's this isolation, and there's ghosts, and there's like inexplicable creepy things in the hotel that are just like remnants of parties from years gone by that are not fully explained. And I love that stuff. I love all the things that aren't fully explained in this, where you just see weird random things happening in the hotel and you don't really know what's going on, but it's just unsettling. So I love The Shining. It's my favorite film of all time. Not only my favorite horror film of all time, it's my favorite film of all time. And I can't say enough good about it. If you haven't seen it, you must see it. If you have the opportunity, please see it on a big screen. A lot of theaters will do a screening of it around Halloween. So check it out, see if it's available in your area. But it's great on a big screen. It's great on a small screen. The performances are great. The effects are great. The scares are great. The music is great. Everything about it is perfect. And I know some people think it's a little too exaggerated, but I love that. It's like almost kabuki theater. It's got this kind of exaggerated quality to it that I think heightens the scares and it heightens the humor. I just can't say enough good things about The Shining. I love it. So there you have it. Those are my top 5 plus an honorable mention favorite horror films of all time. If you're looking for things to watch this spooky season, I would recommend any of those very, very highly. I actually have quite a large collection of horror films, so there's a lot of other ones I could talk about, but that's where I'm going to leave it for today. I hope that was useful for you, and I'll be back again next week, hopefully, with some more, maybe some more Halloween material for you guys. I haven't quite decided what it's going to be yet, but I will be in Iceland that week, so I'll just have to film it ahead of time and schedule it. In the meantime, if you enjoyed this review, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, click the bell for notifications, leave me comments down below, and check back every Wednesday for more videos from me, your host, Logan Albright. Until then, I'll catch you next time. Thanks so much for watching.